Before you can start using OUAV subject areas to create date and time-based visualizations, you must load the calendar and time dimension by running a batch process in the Customer Cloud or WAX or MSCS application. In this video, I want to explain to you first two ways to determine if the calendar dimension has been loaded. Then second, I want to show you how to look at the accounting calendar to determine the period start date, the period end date, and the financial calendar you want to use to load the calendar dimension. And then last, I want to show you how to load the calendar dimension by running the batch process in CCS or WAX or MSCS. So the first thing to do is when you have access to your AV environment, pick up a subject area, open a project, create project, and go and find a date and time dimension, right? A date or time dimension is a folder that has the date postfix or the time postfix. So if you expand the date dimension, there are a lot of attributes or a lot of columns. And if the calendar dimension is loaded, when you pick any of these attributes, you should see for every day of the month for which you have transactional data or for which you have an accounting calendar defined, you should see that date. It's the date in the form of just the month, in the form of just the year. If the fiscal calendar has been defined, what fiscal calendar it belongs to, you know, the calendar year. So all of this information for every date for which you want to do analysis must be first loaded into the calendar dimension. And similarly for time, right? So the time dimension holds for every minute of an hour and the day, right? It shows you, the minute in the hour, the minute in the day. So as soon as it passes the first hour, the minute in the day continues increasing. Whether the hour is AM or PM. So all of this information about time. And once this is loaded, you can use this for analysis where you have a transactional date timestamp, right? So this is one way to determine if your calendar or time dimension has been loaded, right? If it's not loaded, basically it'll say no data available. Now, the other way is to go into your CCS or WAX or MSCS application, search for calendar and time dimension in your search menu. And if the calendar dimension and the time dimension are loaded, you will see the first 100 row, the last 100 rows of it. If you want to see if there's data going further back, you can also specify that. So say from before 01/01/2015, can do a search, and it shows you data that's before calendar date January 1st, 2015, the last 100 records of that. Right? So the time dimension, similarly, if it is loaded, you should see the details of that here. So that's two ways to determine if the calendar and time dimension have been loaded. Now I want you to look at the accounting calendar. So how do you find the accounting calendar? Go to your search menu, type accounting calendar. And I'm just going to press search. So in this environment, there are two accounting calendars defined. And if you look at the first one, this one, if you sort this by year, notice that the fiscal year and the calendar year are exactly the same. 2015, December 2015 is fiscal year 2015. So here is a customer or an implementation where calendar year and fiscal year are the same. But if I want to look at a different calendar, so look at calendar F2, sort this by date. Notice here we are looking at a calendar where the fiscal year is from June 1st to May 31st. So the fiscal year is different from the calendar year. So June 2014 is in fiscal year 2015, accounting period 1. So one of the prerequisites for loading the calendar dimension is that for every fiscal year, there should be 12 accounting periods, right? So that's what has been set up here. Now, again, looking at this calendar, this accounting calendar, we have data going from June 2014 all the way down to December 2020, right? So your period end date is December 31st, 2020. Your period start date is June 1st, 2014. And this is fiscal calendar F2. So these three pieces of information you need to run your batch job. So in order to run your batch job, you need to first go and identify these three pieces of information from the accounting calendar. So the next step is to run the batch job. So to access the batch job, you will go again to your search menu and do add batch job submission. And then search for the generate calendar dimension batch job, generate calendar dimension. Okay. And that brings you to this page. And now you want to enter the information that you gleaned from the accounting calendar. So the period start date was 2014, month was June 1st, and period end was 2020, December 31st. And we wanted to use calendar 2, fiscal calendar 2, which had a fiscal calendar that was different from a regular calendar. And then I want to put 2000 as the maximum error override. And then you press save, right? So then you'll see this saying the status of the job going from pending. And if you keep refreshing this, it says started. And then eventually, after a few minutes, it'll say ended. And once this is ended, basically, you can go back to your calendar and time dimension page and refresh this. And you should see that the calendar dimension has been loaded, right? Second. And once that's done, you can go back to OUAV if this was not already there, and then go up to this menu here and press refresh data. So I want to go to the calendar dimension, doesn't matter. Refresh data. Okay. And it should refresh the data set. So what we discussed was 2 ways to determine if the calendar dimension was loaded. First, you can do it with the UI by querying the calendar and time dimension here. Then we discussed looking at the accounting calendar to identify your period start, period end, and financial calendar. And then going into the batch job submission and providing that information to run the batch job. Thank you.